Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bloom Show. It's my second takeover that I'm doing with the Bloom Show. My name is Melinda Knuth. I am an assistant professor at NC State University. And today I'm going to talk to you about our research that we're doing. So we're going to talk a deep dive into consumer behavior, in particular, the topic of perceptions, because there's different levels that we can do to evaluate how people think and what they're doing. So we're going to take a deep dive into perceptions today. Before I get started, I want to remind you all to like, subscribe, and reshare on this Bloom segment show, as well as the overall show that we have. So let me get my screen shared so we can get started with our topic today. Okay, so when we are, did I lose us? Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, so when we're talking about consumer behavior, we are really focusing in on the different types of contributions to the consumer mindset. When we are talking about this, we really focus in on the retail environment. And when we're talking about the retail environment, this can look many different ways. A lot of our flowers are sold virtually now, which is still considered the retail environment. It's perhaps not what we always think when we're talking about consumer behavior, but we are talking about the avenue and the presentation of the product in whatever form that may be. So that can be our websites, that can be our social media presence, that can be our physical stores. This can also be just general marketing that they see out in what we call the field when we're talking about research, but you guys know as in the real world is another way to talk about the field in research. So in this retail environment, we know a couple of things and that I wanted to start off with. And if you've been to other presentations of mine, this is going to look very similar than to what I previously presented, because this is the basis of a lot of our understanding of consumer behavior. So attraction leads to visual attention. Where people look the most, where they spend the most time looking, is what they're most interested in buying. And you might say, well, of course, Melinda, that makes sense. But this goes a little bit deeper, where, for example, if they're spending a lot of time looking at your website, if they spend a lot of time looking at a particular page, they're probably going to be buying what they're looking at the most. Because we know visual attention and direct thinking about a product leads to purchase intention. So the more that someone interacts with a particular product, physically, on the web, seeking it out, whatever that may be, the greater that connection is to actually purchasing those products. And so that's something that we have to keep in mind as we are presenting our information. If it's not in front of them, if they're not spending time looking at something, it's not going to lead to purchase intent. We need it to be physically in front of them in whatever fashion that may be. So not necessarily like, I'm contradicting myself here, so apologies. But it doesn't necessarily have to physically be in their hand, but it has to be in front of them. It has to be something that they're looking at. Much of our buying decisions are made point of purchase. So the decision to purchase something is made during the moment that they're looking at the product, either on their screen or physically in front of them, whatever that may be. What we're finding is that the decision to purchase something is made point of purchase, but people by and far are doing so much pre-researching before they decide to buy a product that we now are not seeing people come physically to a store to go research, look for what they potentially might want, and then go buy it. Instead, what we're seeing is people are doing this research into what they want They're looking on social media, they're looking on Google, they're looking on other search engine platforms. They're looking for what they want, and that's how they're identifying retailers that they will purchase from. And once they've identified this product is close to what I want, or this is exactly what I want, then they go to the store or the webpage and evaluate this is what I'm going to buy. So we're seeing this shifting from everything happening organically to much of what's done is pre-researched before it even gets to the point where they want to buy something. We still have that point of purchase, so the actual decision is still made in the moment, but we're seeing this pre-researching happening. And what does this mean for you, especially as I assume that many retailers are going to be on the call or going to be watching this recording later? This means that we need to present all the information to help them make that decision and do their pre-research. And that needs to be available online. They need to be able to make their decisions based on this information. Or if we don't provide it, they're going to look in other spaces that are not our store or not our website, or maybe not even in our product category, meaning if they don't find what they want with flowers, they may go to a different alternative category to find what they're looking for instead. And so we need to be providing all of the information that we can when we are presenting our products to our consumers. And since they're doing pre-researching, much of this should be done on our websites and on our social medias to be impactful. We also know, based on how people purchase generally in the social environment, that there's different cues that they use to navigate the retail space and to find what they're seeking. And two of these cues are price and brand. Now, brand can mean many different things. This can be your business brand, and they're looking for that, and they know that your business has a certain brand perception. This could also mean that they're looking for a particular singular product. So if they are aware of a certain rose, if they're aware of a certain type of flower that's named, they may be seeking out this particular product, and they'll be seeking it out by its brand. These are different cues that help consumers understand the quality and the value of what they're getting. And many times we call these utilities in economic terms. And a utility helps you determine if you are going to use it to, or how you're going to use this product or this service. So for example, a common example I use is the utility of time. So time is a very easy thing, because this is something that we all take into consideration when we make decisions. Some of us have time constraint. In this, it means that some of us would rather pay more money in order to have more time. So I'm going to pay someone else more money to do this particular task for me, and then I can spend my time doing other things. A great example of this is if people hire a cleaner, like a housekeeper, to come to their home. They don't want to spend the time, usually, to clean their home, and so they want to spend their time doing other things. This is a time utility. Other people, from my examples that I've given so far, you may have say, I have all the time in the world, but I do not have all of the money in the world. And for people like that, you have a high money utility, or high price utility, usually is what that's called. And in this case, people are very sensitive to price instead of sensitive to time. And so there's trade-offs with these different utilities. So these are just two examples to give. Price, like I was explaining, as well as brand, can have these same utilities. And people are constantly, whether you realizing it consciously or not, making trade-offs between price and brand and other attributes intrinsically, extrinsically in the environment that are constantly being traded off in your decision making in order to purchase products or to purchase services. So the two cues that we see most commonly in plant purchasing, so cut flowers are included in that, is price and brand. Brands really save the shopper that valuable cognitive energy and time in order to do. So they can look at a brand and say, I know the value of this brand and what it represents. And so that will tell me a lot of information about the product. A great example of this is, let's think about coffee. So when I say Folgers, what do you think about? What do you think about the price point? What do you think about the quality? What do you think about the value that it is? When I say Starbucks, so also a coffee brand, what do you think about the price point? What do you think about the quality? What do you think about the value? These brands give us cues, and there's generally like certain cues that they are trying to put across when they're marketing their brand. But each of us have these different perceptions of the brand that we use to decide if we're going to go with Folgers, go with Starbucks, or go with neither and go with another brand. So brand tells us a lot about what this means in the consumer's mind. The other one, of course, is price. And some people are price sensitive. Some people are not price sensitive. I would say across the board that in floral, we mostly have played a price game within our industry. However, not all of our consumers are price sensitive. And we shouldn't always be basing our marketing on this price component. We should be basing it on more attributes in our specific target markets that we're going for. Okay. So that's the general scope of the retail environment. So let's talk a little bit about cognitive processing, because again, this is a research presentation, so we're going to get very deep into this. So there's two different ways in which we either search for or receive information. And this is typically what we call cognitive processing. And there's two types. One is called bottom-up processing. And this is where, as you can see from the picture, there's information that is presented to the person that is being pushed to the person. Meaning there's information that is on this sign that the person is reading and learning about. And so this information is new and influencing the person's decision to think about the product, think about the service, think about whatever it is. So they're processing that. There's another type of cognitive processing called top-down, and this is goal-directed. And this is where the opposite occurs. In this case, the person knows the information and is seeking out certain information to make the purchase decision or to do an action. To tell the difference between the two, because we're talking very theoretically, and a lot of people struggle with that concept of like, okay, well, what's stimuli versus what's goal-directed? A great way to explain stimuli versus so bottom up versus goal-driven top down is think about a product that you decided you wanted to buy and you already knew that you wanted certain things about this product. So let's talk about floral. Let's say you want to buy flowers for a friend's birthday, and you know that they like snapdragons in particular. You would be probably seeking out different bouquets or floral designs that had snapdragons within them. In this case, you are doing goal-directed cognitive processing. Your goal is to find a bouquet that has snapdragons in it, and you are looking for that. And so you've already made the decision that it has to have snapdragons within the floral design in order for you to buy it. So this is goal-directed. The opposite of that is bottom-up. So let's say that you aren't sure what you want. You know that you want a floral design, but you don't know your friend's favorite flower, but you know that you want to buy something for them for their birthday. In this case, this would be bottom up because you would be relying on information about the bouquets to make the final decision. So let's say, okay, in this case, there's this beautiful rose bouquet, and you really like it based on the information that's presented to you. So where it was, where it was grown, you like that, the price point, you like that, which floral artist you're going to get it from, and you like that information. This is all information that is presented to you and given to you. So it's being pushed to you instead of you seeking it out. This is an example of bottom up. The retailer has the most control in a cognitive processing situation when it is bottom up, because you are presenting information to the person, and they're making the decision based on the information that you are presenting, rather than cherry picking through the information that you're presenting to see if it matches what they're looking for. So bottom up processing is where we in the floral industry have the most control over what happens, and we hope to influence them greatly with the information that we're presenting. So there's different things that are going on in the decision-making process, and this happens for every single decision that is being made in a product purchasing context. So you're doing this constantly when you're purchasing a product. And if you're someone like me, I'm constantly buying products. I'm constantly at the grocery store, or I may be buying lunch for myself, or I may be doing other activities. And in this case, there's constantly this process that's going on in my mind every single time I decide to purchase something. So this is something we do innately as human beings, but you may not be aware that you do this, or even that your customers do this. So there's different influences that happen during a purchase event. There's all of these different cues that influence our shopping time and eventually how we purchase. There's first our intrinsic cues with the product. Intrinsic means that it's something internally. So with these internal cues, we are looking for things that, or are observing things that are interesting to us. And again, not all of these things are going to be presented to us as a thought. We are constantly looking, as I'm presenting, I'm looking around my office as I'm thinking of things and talking to the audience. And you are also likely on the other side of the screen looking around at your computer, you're looking at your phone, you're looking at the room around you. And so we don't always think about what we're looking at. There's like our, oh my goodness, I lost the word. Oh, so sorry. There's what is presently in our mind, and then there's our unconscious. So with our unconscious, we're looking at stimuli constantly and processing, what do I need to actually think about versus what do I not need to think about? And your brain does this all the time. And this is part of our intrinsic cues. Our brain is looking for things that we know that we like to look at, or new things that we could potentially like to look at and think about. And this is constantly going on in our brain as we are thinking, as we are having these attitudes, as we're having our different behaviors that we have as human beings. In the retail environment, we also have these extrinsic cues. So this is what's controlled by the retailer. And these are things like signage, our actual displays, our walkways, our employees. These are things that we control. And these are extrinsic cues. So not necessarily something I'm thinking about or that I like. It's things that are presented to me to think about. And this is that bottom-up processing. So presenting things for people to consider and think about. And a lot of that has to do with even in a website format. So what are you presenting on your website that for the person to think about? And how are you guiding them through your website in such a way that you are guiding their visual attention and guiding what they could potentially be interested in to influence where they're looking? Pretty high up in the thinking process, but it makes a difference in what they look at and how much they look at something. Lastly, is other extrinsic cues that the customer controls. And a big category in this is your cell phone. So this is something the consumer can control, but it's not something that we think about. It's something that we are doing or are contributing. If you can't find the information that you need on the signage at the store, or that an employee can answer, or maybe you don't want to talk to the employee, what are you going to do? The first thing that people do is they go to their smartphone and they start Googling, they start looking at social media, they start texting or communicating with other people to find the information that they need, whatever that may be. And so these are other extrinsic cues that are controlled by the consumer, and they also contribute to that shopping time. So we have this internal environment, we have this external environment that sometimes the retailer controls, sometimes the consumer controls, and this all together influences the purchase. Now, this is where we do our best to control what we can as retailers, and perhaps in some areas we need to do better about commanding more of that cueing to make sure that we're capturing that attention that we want. Before we move on to perceptions, which is kind of the deep dive that I want to do today, the last thing I want to leave you with, just generally about consumer research behavior or consumer behavior research, that was rough, is let's talk about the actual interaction with the products. So once they're in our store or at our website, whatever this may be, what is the actual time spent experiencing with the product? Now, in the physical sense, my colleague, Bridget Behe, did a lot of work looking at touching the product, so actually picking it up and interacting with it. And what we noticed is that people spend about 12% of their shopping experience, so shopping time, all of this, they spend about 12% of that time touching the product. And there was a direct relationship, so linearly, which in research world is a really big deal. There's a direct relationship between the time that they touch the product and actually buying it. And this is not there's a distant relationship, whatever, or there's a corollary relationship. These are more subtle ways that there's an interaction. In this case, we're saying this is a direct relationship. So the more that someone touches a product, the more likely they are to buy it. And it really should incentivize us as an industry and as individuals. The more that someone touches and interacts with the product, the more likely they're going to buy it. That means we want them to be touching our products a lot because of that interaction. Potentially, if we get them to interact with it more, our products more, and there's more picking up, more touching, that could lead to even more purchasing of more products. So we're working on that in particular, but at least we know that there's this relationship between the two, and that if you see someone handling a product, there's a high likelihood they're going to buy it, and we want that to happen. Okay, so as I continue my correspondence with the Bloom Show, you're going to be reintroduced to this slide and this information repeatedly. And so if you are unfamiliar with how this process works, we are going to get pretty intimately involved and detailed with it. So we have these three things, I'm going to call them things for now, that we do as people that eventually lead to outward expression of behavior. So first we have perceptions, and our perceptions are things that we that are like little ideas on, I like red, I like sunny days, things like this. These are perceptions that we have, and with these perceptions, they lead into attitudes. So an attitude is, so a perception is more subconscious. So I like something, I don't like something. An attitude is a verbal expression or a thought that comes out of that perception.
with these attitudes, these are things like, not only do I become happy on a sunny day, but I may say, oh, I like to go to the beach with my friends because it's sunny and I like warm sunny days. This becomes an attitude. Versus other people may say, oh, I do not like sunny days. I like rainy days, and rainy days make me feel content. And so that may be an outward expression, an attitude of, I prefer rainy days, and that's what I like. That's a very simple example of the difference between perceptions and attitudes, but one is more of feelings and simple thoughts leading into these verbal outward expressions of more complex concepts that we then express to each other as human beings, or that we express in our outside world. These attitudes lead to our behaviors. So a great example of this is, let's talk about recycling. So recycling, I like to use that as an example because it's pretty straight through on how this works together. So the perception is that the environment, taking care of the environment, or I almost merged those together. So environment is good. So the environment is a good thing. And I like the environment. I like animals in the environment. I like biodiversity. I like having a clean planet. These may be different ideas that culminate together into this concept of environmentalism. It's expressed outwardly in these attitudes about environmentalism, such as, I think that recycling is a good thing. Why? Because I like the planet. Liking the planet is a perception. I think recycling is a good thing is an attitude. I may say, I like recycling. I think recycling is a good thing. I think everyone should recycle. Do you see how these attitudes continue to develop? And they're more complex than simply environment is good. It's more complex and more complicated, and it usually includes interacting with other people about it. How that works in behavior is I go from saying I like something, so I like recycling, to actually recycling, actually taking a piece of paper, taking a piece of plastic, taking even composting, if you want to think of that as recycling in a very abstract way. But instead of just saying, I like these things and I want to do these things, or even just saying I do these things, physically doing them and making that into a physical movement becomes behavior. And all of these feed into each other. So a perception is going to lead to behavior of some kind, either action or inaction. A perception is going to lead to attitudes and expression of those attitudes. Attitudes are going to lead into behavior. Behavior circles back into, if that behavior accomplishes what I wanted with my perception, it's going to do a feedback loop into leading into more positive perceptions about that behavior. Or if it was a negative perception or negative behavior and a negative interaction, like let's say I couldn't get my recycling bin. And I called somebody to get it and I wasn't able to get it. And so there's this negative activity that happened with that behavior that may lead to negative perceptions. And so there's this feedback loop that's constantly going on. And this happens for everything that we do. Every outward expression of behavior has been influenced by attitudes and perceptions that we have. And so sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But this is how our brain makes decisions about what we do, is because of all of these components together. Now, as a human behavior researcher, we can focus on each of these areas to pull out and piece apart how they work together or they don't work together. And because someone might have an attitude about something, but they never outwardly express it in their behavior. They may hide it. They may just not feel strongly enough in their attitude for it to become a behavior. Going back to our recycling example, this attitude I may have a strong attitude about, I think recycling is good. However, when it comes into practice, I may never recycle. I may never call to get a recycling bin. I may never put items in a recycling bin. I may choose to do other behaviors. And so as we learn as human behavior researchers, sometimes we have these positive perceptions and these positive attitudes, but a lack of behavior. And how can we influence that? Or how can we adjust what we are doing as an industry, as individual people, to adjust for the positive behavior that we're trying to get people to do, or just observe, are they going to do it? So I know this is kind of high level, but I have examples for you. So let's talk about perceptions. Let's talk about the first item. So all the way over here, this newborn perception that develops into attitudes and behaviors. So a while ago, I did an experiment with Jade Wu and Charlie Hall and Marco Palma, looking at the different perceptions of the attributes of floral designs. And so we were looking at a variety of different floral elements that are typically used in floral design. So here's our big example of how this relates directly to you guys in floral. So we were looking at the general consumer. Are they interested? What elements are they most interested in? Is there a preference? Do they want more obligate lines? Do they want more straight lines? Would they prefer most designs to be symmetrical or asymmetrical? When we're looking at the different color palettes, would they prefer polychromatic, complementary, analogous, or monochromatic? Is there a preference in the general audience that perhaps we are not capturing that we could capture? Because floral designs always have flowers, we also incorporated some elements of so please, for the floral designers out there, please don't yell at me for this, but we incorporated the different species, which I just called elements, so please don't yell at me. And we incorporated the top 4 most commonly imported flowers that are purchased in the US. So that was roses and alstroemeria, chrysanthemum, and carnations, because we wanted to know, we have all these different elements and what are the perceptions of them, but do the flowers also influence the design strongly and what they like about it? With this, we used eye tracking to evaluate their perception. So we were looking at these intrinsic cues and the extrinsic cues. So we were asking them extrinsically, what do you like? And then we were checking that with their visual behavior. And so this is what a heat map looks like. Excuse me. And with this, we were looking at the different facial recognition emotions that people typically have. So we had anger and sadness and disgust and joy and surprise. And you can see a lot is going on initially, and it kind of tapers off. Joy, we have a little blip over here as well, which was kind of interesting. But wherever you see the movements, so I will play it again. Wherever you see the dots is where people are looking. And this is a heat map, meaning the more that someone looks at an area, the hotter that the dot becomes. So where you see yellow and red is where we're seeing a lot of eye movement resting. And they're spending a lot of time looking at these, a lot of the focal flowers on the designs, as you can see, and a lot of the different color variation, which is pretty interesting. Okay. So what we found is that when we were asking people is that they seem to visually really like the curved line over the straight line, which wasn't expecting that. They also seem to really like symmetric over asymmetric with their visual attention as well. We lastly saw that polychromatic had the quickest time to first fixation, meaning they looked at polychromatic first. However, when you look at total visual attention that they had across the different designs, the analogous held the most time, total time looked at, and had the highest total fixation count. And so they kept returning to look at, this was one of the designs that we presented, pretty lovely in my opinion. And this had the most time for them to look at. What was interesting is that across the different species, the total time spent was no different. However, when we asked them perceptually, they said that they liked rose arrangements the best. It's not surprising. Roses are a top seller in our industry, as are the other three flowers, but roses are the top overall. And so what this tells us is that there wasn't a big difference, even though they're saying perceptually, yeah, I like the roses the best. It didn't actually come out when we were looking at their behavior with it. So perceptually, there's a little bit of incongruency going on there. What they're saying and what they're doing is not quite on board, which is very interesting in a research context. In a practical context, I know that's much more complicated. You're probably like, what does this mean? But in a research context, that leads us to believe that there's more going on in the decision-making process than what they're communicating to us. So that is one example of perceptions that we have with floral design and eye tracking. And another area that I wanted to touch on, and again, if you've heard me present before, I've also said this a couple of times on the Bloom Show as well, benefits messaging. This is really important for us to be communicating, is not only what our product is, but what it can do for people. So what can our products actually, how can they benefit people? So there's different domains in which we commonly talk about the benefits that plants provide. And these can be physiological, they can be physical, social, environmental, and economic. These are commonly described domains of benefits from the World Health Organization. So these are well-defined in many contexts across different industries and scopes. But if you've heard Charlie and I talk, again, we like to talk about them in the context of plants and cut flowers. And we see a lot of the benefit. And there's been research done not only by SAF, but with American Floral Endowment and others that show that people really see positive benefit from flowers in different ways. And I have physiological highlighted here in bold because there's been a lot of work done to show that there's cognitive benefit to people interacting with flowers. And this is a key area that we've shown as researchers that people resonate well with. In other areas, it's there's some variability where they're like, what, like maybe not. But across the board, physiological seems to be a strong indicator of how positive that flowers are to people. And so, for example, a great way to talk about physiological benefits is being around flowers decreases your stress level. Very simple statement, backed in science, by the way. And it resonates well with a lot of people because they see the benefit directly with that, especially living in a highly stressful world that we do. That's an easy way that we can communicate. Not only these are beautiful, they're going to last you 14 days. They're coming from this location and they're this preferred product. Those are all features, but what can this actually do for them? How does it benefit them to buy this floral design? And I think this is something perceptually that we can really hack into in the consumer's mind to communicate our benefit to them. Something that we talk about a lot in floral, and I am excited to talk about more with as we are understanding consumers more and more, is gifting versus self-purchase. And this gets to motivations. And so you're like, these words are coming back. I talked about them about 15 minutes ago now. Like, yeah. And with this, with
Sorry, Melinda, I had to jump in. Can you hear me? You're on mute. You muted yourself. Sorry about that. I'll jump right in.
Oh man, I wonder how long I've been muted. Oh no.
Just 2 minutes. Just
Okay. Oh man. Okay. Well, we're back, everybody. I'm gonna start. Oh, so sorry, audience. I also want to say so sorry about starting a little bit late. I had some issues with my computer, which is why I'm on my laptop. So I'm just rocking with the communication and the technology problems today. So I apologize to all the audience about this. I'll go back to just starting over on this piece of information just to make sure that that I didn't miss anything with you. So within gift purchasing, self-purchasing and gift purchasing, you can think of them as two separate items. So they're two separate silos from each other. With gift purchasing, you can have intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. With self-purchasing, you have intrinsic and you have extrinsic motivations. And I don't like to think about them, at least from what we've seen in data-wise, as you either gift purchase or the alternative is you self-purchase. That's not what's coming out with data. That's not what we're seeing. We're not seeing a trade-off where if I gift purchase this bouquet, I'm not going to self-purchase. We're not seeing that. We're seeing both behaviors happen simultaneously. The difference is what is motivating the person to gift purchase versus what is motivating the person to self-purchase. And those can be two different arenas. So let's talk about gift purchasing in particular. So setting aside self-purchase. If we're talking about that, there's different motivations in which that you would gift purchase. And these can be intrinsic or they can be extrinsic. Intrinsic motivation is internal reward that we have. So it makes me feel good to give this gift. I take a lot of pride in my gift giving. I do this because I want to maintain social relationships, but it's some sort of internal reward that we're getting from giving this gift. The opposite of that is extrinsic motivation. And with this is some sort of external reward that we get. For example, giving this gift results in physical affection from the person I get it from. They may give me a hug or a kiss, and I'm extrinsically motivated for that. I may also want to maintain social status. So by giving this gift, I maintain my social status with the person and thus are very satisfied. So there's different reasons in which we would intrinsically or extrinsically give a gift. And the same thing happens with self-purchase. We have intrinsic and extrinsic motivations in which we do that. Another way to think of this intrinsic versus extrinsic is, let's think about a student. In this example, a student has these internal motivations to be a student in a class. And this may be the purpose. So I have purpose to be here. I have interest to be here. I want to have mastery in this subject. I have curiosity. I want to know more. I also have pride if I do a good job in this class and in this subject matter. The extrinsic motivations, so for the same reason to be in the class, maybe I like to get good grades and I like to have a high GPA. I earn points from doing this particular class and I like to earn points. I like to win. I may get more money by pursuing this career. And so I want to do well in this class because of this reward later. I may also be pursuing the career path that I want. And this career path is highly visible. And I like to be visible in front of others. It may also be that I do well on exams and I want to show my instructor that I can do well. And when they give me a compliment, it makes me feel really good. And I want to perform well so I get those compliments. So you can see between the two, there's different levels of motivation. What this looks like in practice is we're seeing a lot of emotional and social well-being from these different gifting and self-purchasing behaviors. We're seeing a lot of social well-being from gifting. So there's a lot of external reason in which we gift, but there are some internal as well. A lot of self-purchasing is that emotional well-being that we get from purchasing, as well as that a lot of intrinsic motivations. And there are some extrinsic examples, such as perhaps we want to show off that we can buy this large floral design and thus show off to others that we are affluent and we can consistently buy large floral designs and have a beautiful house and display these large floral designs in them. That would be an extrinsic motivation to self-purchase. So you can see that there's different ways in which people are motivated. Your different target audiences will have these different motivations. And if you can pinpoint the reason why your particular target market is gifting, intrinsic or extrinsic, or both, maybe there's a mix of the two, and also self-purchasing, intrinsic, extrinsic, or a combination of the two, you can really hack into the perception of your target market. So if you know that they're doing a lot of gift purchasing for personal well-being and like internal reasons, a lot of your messaging and your presentation of the product should be around those reasons to really appeal to those people in that target market. Other things that we see that's very interesting is when we see a lot of high expenditures with gifting, we're seeing this as an extrinsic motivation. So like I was saying with the gifting, historically, we've seen some self-guilt with high expenditures with self-purchasing. However, this has changed a lot in the past about 5 to 6 years, which directly translates to a lot of the things that we see with COVID. What's interesting about this is that a lot of people are changing the way that we socially interact with each other. And we're getting more intrinsic motivation than historically when a lot of our motivations used to be more extrinsic. Now, on a societal level, people have opinions about that. But on a marketing level, what we're seeing is that self-purchasing is not as guilty as historically it used to be. People don't feel bad about, oh, I shouldn't buy this for myself, blah, blah, blah. No, we're seeing a lot of that going away, which is great because we can target those people more who are self-purchasing and really lean into the positive attributes of self-purchasing. It makes you feel good. You want to take care of yourself. This whole concept of self-care is part of self-purchasing and really leaning into that. Like I was saying, we also see this high-end branding. So self-purchasing with the extrinsic motivation. So showing off that we can spend high dollar values, this prestige. You can get high motivation and high self-esteem from having these high-end brands or these high-end products that you're showing off to others. And so that's where we're seeing that combination of externally motivated to show off what we have and internally motivated because it raises our self-esteem. When consumers feel constricted, and this is what's difficult because we're seeing self-purchasing become a greater category. When consumers feel constricted, especially economically, they are less interested in self-gifting because they feel the constraint, usually economically, and they want to maintain their emotional well-being and their other components of their life. And so they may, in times when they feel constricted, reduce their self-purchasing. And so we have to be very careful about the way that we present our product and also be very aware of what's happening in the general economic sphere, so the environment around us, because this could be hampered a little bit or maybe a lot, we don't know exactly the extent of this, if they feel personally constrained in their finances. Okay, I'm going to give a teaser here for attitude because the next time I speak to you, we're going to speak about attitudes. But for now, I'm going to leave it there and end our presentation right about on time. So with that, that was that was an hour deep dive into perceptions of our consumers and gives you a little insight into what we're looking at and how we're trying to, I've said this word already a couple times today, but how we're trying to hack the consumer mind to influence their perceptions. Much of the time we spend just looking at what are their perceptions. So what is the baseline? And then we look at what are ways that we can potentially influence them positively to encourage them to like flowers, encourage them to buy more flowers, and to interact with our product. So looking forward to hearing your questions. And if you have any questions or comments, last time I was on, you guys had a lot of really great comments, and really looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say. So thank you all for a great show. Again, apologies about the technology issues and such. Hopefully that didn't hamper your curiosity with the topic today. I just wanted to remind you, as a last item, be sure to like, subscribe, and reshare the episode today, and make sure you subscribe to The Bloom Show. So thank you.
The Bloom Show, innovate, connect and bloom.
So no